Hi, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me. We have some more people who are joining. So I'm Debbie Schwartz. Nice to see everybody tonight. I started a website called Road to College and the Facebook group called Paying for College 101. And I'd love if anybody wants to share in the chat where they're from. I assume a lot of the people on tonight have students who are juniors, but maybe you have a student who's a sophomore or younger. So love to hear all about that. And I am going to ask if anybody is willing to volunteer, because this would help me out a lot. I'm like the only person here doing this on my end. If somebody could, is willing to volunteer to be, I can make you a co-host. And then if you see people who want to join the meeting, if you could let them in, because that's, Zoom's like new security. It's not new, but it's their security thing. So you have to constantly be letting people in. Anybody willing to help out and do that?
Debbie, I could do that. This is
Bridget. Bridget, thank you. Okay, I'm gonna make you a co-host, and that would be great. Thank you so much. And now you see, right, where you can admit people in?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so lots of people from lots of different places: New Jersey, Texas, Utah, Philly, Boston, Michigan. Love it. All over the place. So let me just do a tiny bit of housekeeping. This is, as you can see, this is actually a meeting. It's not a webinar. I just think it's nice to do it that way. If you want to put your video on, we can see each other. If you don't, that's fine too. But so the only downside of doing it as a meeting is that don't unmute yourself unless you want to ask a question, because we all hear the background noise and it makes it kind of noisy. So if you can keep yourself muted, that's great. If you want to ask a question and interrupt me, I am fine if you unmute yourself. We just don't want to hear all the background noise if somebody's not asking a question. And then the other thing is we've got the chat. I know people sent me questions ahead of time, and I think a lot of the questions people sent ahead of time, I will kind of be naturally addressing as we go through the information tonight. But if you have a question, put it in chat. And then everybody else who's out there, we have like 231 people with us. If you know the answer, I'm fine. Like answer somebody's questions. Let's all help each other out. So share your wealth of information and don't be shy and answer somebody's question. If nobody knows the answer, that's fine. I'll see. Maybe I'll know the answer. Maybe I won't, but at least we'll try and help each other as questions come up. Okay, so I am going to get out a lot of people with juniors. I love it. Good. Okay, I'm going to get started. So let me tell you the way I do the presentation. Is I explain a little bit background on what merit scholarship is, the different types of merit scholarships, and then I talk about all the information that's out there to help you find merit scholarships. And then we have a tool that helps you find the colleges faster, because we've pulled together a lot of the information. Oh, I think I see another Debbie Schwartz out there. So you're out there somewhere from Chicago. So nice to see you with the same name. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen and then we will get going. And let me just get the chat back on. And if somebody just put it into put it into chat, make sure that everybody can see my screen. Or anybody wants to say, can you see the screen? It says merit introduction to merit scholarships. Okay, great, good. Okay, one last thing. Let me shut off all my buzzers on my own computer so we don't get notifications. Oh, okay, they're off. Okay, so tonight we're talking about merit aid, lots of different terms. People call it merit scholarship. Some people, I actually try and identify it as college merit aid, merit scholarship, because you'll see that that term gets used in a lot of different ways, which is fine. You know, that's just the way the industry or the space is. You just want to make sure you understand how they're using that terminology when you're reading or talking about merit aid or merit scholarships. So I also always like to give thanks to College Ave Student Loans, is a student loan company that I've worked with for the past 3 years. They've sponsored a lot of great educational content that we've provided. They've sponsored all of these series that I've done on merit scholarships. Quite honestly, in about a month or so, we talk a lot about student loans. College Ave sponsors that. And I will say that even though you guys mostly are families with juniors, I would really listen in to the information about student loans. We're going to talk about federal student loans and private student loans, and it just gives you a head start. You know, maybe you'll never have to go down that route. That's great. But if potentially you do, you kind of understand where you're going. And sometimes it's actually good to work backwards and understand the loan space and kind of, you know, maybe, you know, how you can avoid it, to sort of say. So, but College Ave is a great company. If you get to the point where you might need private student loans, which will probably be a year from now, I highly recommend that you check them out. They have done a lot to make it easier to apply for loan, get approved, and quite honestly to configure the loan. So they have a lot of options and they have a lot of great tools on their website. So really good company, and they should be on your radar if you need to have loans at that point. So let me just see, I see somebody that has done some scribbling on this here. I think I can get that away. Can I erase that? Yes. Okay. So I'm going to erase that. And let's move on. Okay. So what is merit aid? I actually sometimes put out a poll, but I forgot to do that. But so merit aid actually can be viewed as a combination of different things. Some, you know, sometimes people view it as a pure merit scholarship, and it's a college truly recognizing, you know, achievements of students. And that's why they're giving out the scholarship money. Merit scholarship money can be used, quite honestly, as just a discount. So some schools are using it to both attract higher quality students that might not necessarily think about coming to that school, but they will because now they're getting a certain scholarship amount, which brings down the cost of the school. Other schools, quite honestly, kind of give everybody a discount or everybody a merit scholarship. So some schools, if you look at the numbers, and we'll tell you where to find the numbers, it says that they give merit scholarships to 99% of their freshmen. So is that really, are they really acknowledging anybody, or are they just giving a flat out discount? So this kind of term merit scholarship or merit aid is used in a lot of different ways. And I think it really depends on what type of college that is using it, and kind of, I hate to say it, but where they are in the ecosystem of rankings. Not that I don't love rankings at all, but there is kind of a certain, you know, order to colleges. You know, I think what's bad about rankings is that, you know, there's no difference between number, you know, 23 and number 19. So that, like, that relativeness is not that important. But you know, there is a difference between a school in the top 25 and the school who's, you know, in the you know, like closer to 100. And so when you kind of go down the ranking spectrum, you see how schools use merit scholarships differently. Quite honestly, off the bat, I'm going to say that the top schools, and I don't know what exact number, but let's say the top 20 schools, they do not give merit scholarships. Their focus is helping students that have financial need. They give 0 merit scholarships, and every year, more than once, I will get a family. In fact, I had a mother who reached out like not that long ago, was very excited. Her student had gotten into Brown. He'd gotten into Brown early decision. So I don't know why it took so long for them to realize, but had gotten into Brown and was now emailing to say, how come her student didn't get any merit scholarships? Like she didn't understand why, because he was such a high achieving student. And I, like flat off the bat, a school like Brown doesn't give anybody merit scholarships. So, that's important to know that those top schools are not giving out merit scholarships. It's just a pure issue of supply and demand. They have enough supply. They have enough demand. They don't have that much supply. And so they have too many applications, as we know from all the numbers that we're reading in the paper. They have too many applications coming their way. They don't need to attract a different type of student. They have kind of their pick of the litter. So, but as you go down, there are schools, and I think I once looked at the numbers, maybe like around number, high 20s or 30, that those schools start to give merit scholarships. But they're giving merit scholarships truly for the achievement, truly to attract those highest level students who they believe, are extraordinary, and they're giving money to, show how well that those students have done. And then as you go kind of further down the rankings, it starts to kind of shift. So, colleges are still giving it for achievement, but they're maybe giving out more and more of the money. And then quite honestly, I don't know where this number shifts, but maybe it's like past 100, there are the schools that are giving a merit scholarship to every student. So you can kind of see how there's this relationship between where schools fall in the ranking and how elite and selective and desirable they are versus how much money they're giving out. And that doesn't mean to say that a school that is lower down that is giving out money is not a good school. It's just kind of a little bit of their pecking order and how they're trying to attract students. So that was a long-winded answer to what is merit aid. But the other thing I wanted to point out about the word merit is that it is used for private scholarships. So a lot of times you'll hear a private scholarship being termed a merit scholarship. It truly is. That just means that, again, the scholarship money is given out based on some sort of achievement or criteria or maybe essays. But it is the difference, obviously, between a private scholarship is that money is from some sort of private institution, company, organization, and the merit scholarships from colleges are from the colleges themselves. So it's the college giving out money versus a private institution giving out a private scholarship. Two different things. Don't confuse them. And then the last way that merit scholarship is used is in the National Merit Scholarship, which is just based on PSAT scores, has nothing to do with what we're talking about tonight. It is a different form of a merit scholarship, but it doesn't fall into the same category of merit scholarships that we're talking about tonight. Okay. Oops, sorry, skipped ahead. Yep, sorry. Okay, so here's some important things to know about merit scholarships. And most times when a college awards a student merit scholarship money, it is renewable, right? So that means they're telling you as part of your student's college offer, and then that money is going to be available freshman through senior year. That's pretty good. That is a big difference between need-based money. So if you're a family that might get need-based money or based on financial need, that money is recalculated every year, because every year they need to go back to your FAFSA and your income taxes from 2 years prior, and things might have changed, right, in your financial situation. So they're recalculating that money every year. Merit money is given out at the beginning, and it's available for 4 years, with a small caveat that usually most colleges have some sort of requirement related to the renewability of the money. So, and it's usually a minimum GPA requirement. And so the reason why I bring that up is because it's important to know what that requirement is. Some schools, it's a 3.0. That's, maybe very comfortable. Your student's not going to worry about it. They can easily make a 3.0. Other schools, actually, the minimum GPA requirement to get the scholarship renewed is a 3.5. Again, your student might be a great student in high school. Going to college is, obviously different, especially that freshman year. And sometimes that 3.5 is a little tricky for particularly a freshman or even a sophomore to maintain. So I only say that because, again, I've had so many situations where a family decided that their child was going to go to a school based on the fact that they could afford it with the merit scholarship money, and then the student could not make the requirements, and so the merit scholarship money couldn't be renewed, and then obviously that becomes a very expensive situation. So I'm just kind of putting things out there. It's exciting to get the merit scholarship money, exciting to even, like search for it, but you want to know what the requirements are and making sure that your student can continue to get it for the 4 years. Oh, and one other last little caveat is that, unfortunately, even in the day of COVID, in the age of COVID, that colleges are still, not every college, but colleges have still increased their tuition. And whatever scholarship money your student gets, it's usually flat. So if they've been awarded $15,000, it's going to be $15,000 for every year, even though the tuition might increase. So again, I say all these things for financial planning purposes, because at some point you're going to get to the stage where you need to look at what the 4-year costs of going up to a particular college is going to be. So there's 3 types of merit scholarships I'm going to talk about, and then go into like how we actually find them. So the first type is what, it's not me, and just these are just general terms. They're not like, like industry specific terms, but basically it's what you would call automatic merit aid or merit scholarship. Usually this type of scholarship is based on some sort of achievement level. In the past, it was based on GPA and SAT, ACT scores. We're going to talk about that, where test scores fit in right now. But because of a lot of schools going test optional, obviously the SAT scores were taken away, but a lot of schools are still giving this automatic merit scholarship, but they're obviously weighing much heavily on the GPA these days. And I'm going to show you examples. A school that offers automatic merit aid also usually shares this information on their website. There's going to be a chart. There's going to be some sort of table that says, if you meet this requirement, you're going to get either this specific dollar amount, or you're going to be in the range of getting this dollar amount. So on some level, I actually like these schools that give the automatic merit aid because they're transparent. They try and share as much information beforehand so that where your student might fall in kind of their brackets. And also, for families on here who might have a 9th grader or a 10th grader, you can actually look at some of these schools and have a better understanding of, my son or daughter needs to get this level of GPA to get this amount of money. And so you kind of have a goal to look towards. So that's the value of starting early and doing some research. Okay, let me just, I think there might be 1 or 2 people who we have to mute. Okay, so let's see. Oh, the other thing about GPA in this whole process, and it's just something we have to live with or work around, is that there's not a standardization, unfortunately, right, to GPA. Your school might calculate GPA a certain way. They might include the weighting, and then quite honestly, most colleges recalculate the GPA. So most colleges are taking away the weighting, and they are just calculating the 5 core classes. And that's so that they can have a much more apples to apples comparison. The reason why I bring it up, that's going to be an issue in a lot of areas, or of the process, but particularly for merit scholarships, if you're looking at a website that says your student needs to get 3.8 to get this amount of money, you want to know how they're calculating that 3.8. Again, most colleges are using unweighted, and they're going on a 4.0 scale, but I can't say it's 100%. So there might be a college that is just going to accept your student's high school GPA and work off of that. But a majority of others are going to recalculate the GPA. Okay, so Kim's asking, is there a date scheduled for student loans webinar? I don't have a specific date yet. Well, actually I do, but it's like May 20th. So you have a little while. We'll give out a lot of information about those webinars. So the reason, again, why it's important to understand this GPA issue, and I'll just give you an example. I had parents call me in February. They were very disappointed. They had targeted a certain school where their daughter did get into the school, but she didn't get the top level scholarship amount, and they just couldn't understand it. The way they calculated her GPA, she should have been in the top level. Well, it turned out, of course, that the school calculated her GPA a different way, and therefore, she fell into the level below where they thought she was going to be. And it was a significant dollar amount. Actually, in her particular case, she was just on the cusp. So they appealed it. That's a whole nother process. But my point is, as much as you can, you want to clarify that information beforehand so that you're not in the situation, right, where this student was, where they have to appeal, or maybe if you know ahead of time that your student is so close to the edge, there's something maybe that they can still work on, in fall that will bump up their GPA. So here's an example of automatic merit aid at the Miami University. And I just showed the chart that they used to have on their website last year, which was in 2020, and this year, 2021. Obviously, the chart on the right is from last year, 2020. It includes both SAT, ACT scores and the GPA. That was last year, right? That was the pre-test optional world. But as schools move to test optional, you can see on the right that Miami University this year only had a chart that showed just GPA. And what's interesting, what you can see is they also recalibrated their GPA breakouts, right? So in 2020, their highest GPA was at that level started at 3.5. Now in 2021, they were starting at 3.95. So I just wanted to point that out. I don't, that colleges, put a lot of thinking into these numbers, into what levels they're gonna, give certain merit money to, and they have their own goals, and they are trying to attract, a certain number of students that have that 3.95 GPA and above. And for attracting those students, they're willing to give out a certain amount of money. And I bet you, I'm not in the behind the scenes on some of these colleges, but I bet you that Miami University has actual numbers behind this chart that says we want, 300 students in that top bracket. We want 400 in the next bracket. They probably have numbers that they are targeting and using the dollars to attract certain numbers of students with a certain type of academic achievement. So, and we'll get to it a little bit later on, but that's kind of the business behind what's happening in colleges these days. Here's another example at Michigan State University. So this was this year, 2021. And even though Michigan went test optional, and it even says it in the description that they will still accept students without test scores, and they will still give out money to students without test scores, and they did. They showed a chart that has the ACT, SATs, on the vertical and their GPAs on the horizontal. So they just, I don't know why they still did it. Maybe they just didn't have time to change it, but, they were still, so I guess what this is saying is that if your student did take a test score and submitted it to Michigan State, then Michigan State was probably going to use it for purposes of merit scholarship. But again, what they were also making clear was that if you didn't take the test and you didn't have the test score, they were still going to evaluate you. It was a little bit unclear because this was the only chart they showed how they were going to evaluate those students. Were they going to evaluate them on the same GPA level or not? That was still unclear. So there's a lot of murkiness in the college admissions process, and particularly in merit scholarships, but we're trying to get our hands on as much data as possible to make sense of it. And a lot of times I encourage students and parents to ask questions. So quite honestly, if my student was interested in applying to Michigan State and they didn't have a test score, I would have encouraged them to get in touch with the admissions rep at Michigan State, say, hey, I see that you have this chart on your website. I'm not sure if I'm going to apply with my test score or not. Like, how are you evaluating people without test scores? Can you be more specific? In this day and age, it is completely fair to ask that type of question. And I also think it's a great training ground for your son and daughter to teach them how to advocate for themselves and how to get the information they need. This is a huge decision for them and for you, financially, and for them it's 4 years, and it actually might be financial for them too, because they're going to have to pay back loans. So the more information that you can get, the better. And if you've got questions, ask. There is nothing wrong with asking questions. Okay, that was what I was automatic merit aid. So the next category is what I call competitive merit aid, and it's somewhat similar, except you have to usually fill out a separate application. Sometimes you have to do a separate essay. And so the reason why I highlight these types of scholarships is because they also sometimes have different deadlines, and that can be really important. So, you know, and again, you'll know all this by looking at the college's website. Either they'll be very transparent and they'll have some sort of a grid or chart that I showed you, or they might just have a page that says, here are all the different types of merit scholarships you can apply to. And then you're going to want to, find out what the deadlines are, what the, if there's a separate application, is there just a checkbox on the regular application? Is there a different essay? You want to know all the requirements for applying, so you don't want to get stuck thinking your student applied and they missed something in the process. So, and sometimes dollar amounts related to these scholarships are listed on their website. Sometimes it isn't. The information I'd love to see, which is not always shown on the website, is how many of the scholarships they're going to be giving out. Usually if it's like a one, full ride scholarship or something like that, they'll usually say there's only one. But sometimes, it's other scholarships, they just don't tell you the how many. Again, this is a great question. There's nothing wrong with your student asking that type of question. You want to know, how competitive is it? Is this like a one, like, like one person gets it at the school, or is this one that like maybe they give out 50 or 75 of? So here's an example of two different competitive merit scholarships from colleges. The first on the left is actually USC. And the reason why I use that example is because the deadline, and this is actually pretty well known in the admission space, but the deadline for merit scholarships at USC, which is University of Southern California, because it's another USC abbreviation, but the deadline for merit scholarships at University of Southern California is December 1st. The deadline for regular applications at USC is January 1st. So if your child applied January 1st thinking that they could still apply for a merit scholarship, not happening. They missed the deadline, and they're pretty strict. So again, that's why it's so important to kind of get your arms around the process, around the information, around the dates. I would hope that families with juniors that are going to be, rising seniors, that, by the summer, you at least have a good sense of what the college list is that your students applying to. Of course, there's going to be schools that come on and off. It's like always like a moving target, but I would have the good bulk of them that you feel comfortable with, like sometime over the summer, because you want to make sure you have all this information about, deadlines, about what the essays are, what the supplemental essays are, what the essays are for scholarships, because then you have a better idea, quite honestly, of their workload. It is going to be work. It's, filling out the applicants, filling out the Common App, and then there's essays, and it just, you want to get a handle on how much they need to get done. So the example on the right was actually from BU. Again, I was just kind of showing you that BU, you have to apply separately for some of their scholarships. Again, this was from this year, and BU said, test scores are not required, but they wanted to give you a sense of the caliber of the student that they were taking for these scholarships. So they kind of said, usually in the past, students that had an SAT above 1500, an ACT above 33, that was the type of student that got this scholarship. So they were just kind of giving you some sort of, guidelines so that you knew the type of caliber of student that was going to be accepted for the scholarship. And then let's see. Oh, these other examples I just wanted to show is that there, again, I guess the hardest thing about the college admissions process is that every college to some extent kind of gets to choose how they want to run their process on some level.
I got it.
There is the Common App, so that's great. But, when it comes to these additional scholarships, colleges can choose what they want to do. As you can see, some are being transparent, some are being, telling you have to do a separate application. So I show these two examples here is because some schools, you actually have to, get a separate application, from the school to apply for the scholarships. And then other schools, you can't apply for the scholarships once you actually apply for the admission. And then at that point, you get access to your portal and the scholarship information is in there. So there are all different ways that schools do it. We had some families. I have a service called the concierge service that we work a little bit more closely with some families, and those families, a lot of the students were eligible for scholarships, but they became eligible after they submitted. They didn't even know if they had gotten in. They submitted their applications on January 1st. And then some of the schools contacted them and said, we would like to let you know that you can apply for additional scholarships. So that was after January 1st that they then had to apply for additional scholarships that had additional essays. I just tell you all this so that you know what's coming down the pike. We can't necessarily control it, but those students did the work, but they were a little burnt out in January, continuing to write essays. But and I can't remember which specific schools they were, and maybe they could have asked ahead of time if that was the case. You just want to, again, my big thing is ask questions. If you can't find the information on the school's website, or if they're not sharing it in any of the virtual presentations that they're doing. Okay, the last type of merit scholarship is talent-based, pretty straightforward. If you've got some sort of art, music, dance, theater type of talent, there are schools that are giving out specific scholarships for that. The thing that you need to keep in mind for those scholarships, similar to the competitive, is there's usually a deadline. There's usually, you have to make some sort of schedule appointment for a portfolio review or an audition. And so you just want to make sure you're aware of all of those requirements. This is just an example from Muhlenberg that showed you that they give out talent scholarships. And in this case, they were asking that students who are applying had to make an appointment with the department head. So again, you just need to know like all of the details of the process, and that process might differ school to school. Okay, let me just take a quick sip and let's see what type of questions there are. Okay, Bonnie's asking, and it's not a silly question, and I get this question a lot. The dollar amounts that are listed on the website, is this per semester or per year? They're per year. They're usually per year. And the other question that I get is that, when you get your students like award letter, and then there's a merit scholarship, it is, again, usually the money that's listed is for 1 year, but they will say if it's renewable at that point. So then you can assume that same amount will be available every year. So Vina is saying, if with students applying early decision, ask the university if the university offers a financial pre-read so that you know what you may get and then decide if you want to apply. If your family needs merit-based aid for early decision school to work, ask if the school gives merit aid for early decision applications. Some schools do not. Vina, that's a great recommendation. So what she's basically saying is that some schools, there's no guarantee that it's the schools your student is interested in. Some schools give pre-reads. So you can actually ask the college and say, I'm really interested in applying, my student's really interested in applying early decision. We want to make sure that we can truly afford it. Here's all of our paperwork. Can you review it and give us a pre-read on what our financial cost is going to be? Some schools will do it, some schools will not. I bet even if the school that does it will not guarantee their numbers, but they're not, and they're just kind of doing that to cover themselves, but you will get a good sense of whether or not, you can afford that school. You might ask, well, why don't you just use the net price calculator, right? I mean, that's the purpose of the net price calculator. And for those of you who don't know, the net price calculator is on all colleges' websites. The government mandated it like several years ago, and it's supposed to give you an estimate of what that school costs you. And so the issue with net price calculators is that some are accurate and some are not. So the government mandated that colleges put net price calculators on their website, but they did not mandate any sort of accuracy. Seems easy enough to me. I don't know why. It seems like that should be like the one, like a low hanging fruit from a policy issue, but nobody has gone after that. So my advice to you is that when you use a net price calculator, kind of pay attention. Sometimes you can tell that the numbers that they have in the calculator are actually old, meaning that they are basing it on tuition from 2019. You know, sometimes colleges just don't update their net price calculators. Some colleges, the net price calculators do not ask for like test scores or GPAs. And so if they're not asking for anything additional and they're just asking for pure financial information, then it's most likely that the number that they're giving you is not estimating any sort of merit aid. So I still recommend you do net price calculators. I would save that information just to see what your final numbers come out to compared to the net price calculator. I just wouldn't use it as gospel. You know, the term I use a lot is directional. I think a lot of information that you're going to come across, I would, you know, is part of a piece of a puzzle, and you're going to use it like to directionally say, hey, yeah, it looks like we can afford it. I would never guarantee anything, but you know, it looks like it's in the ballpark. Something else that I'm gonna recommend, and I'm actually going to stop sharing for 1 second, but actually let me clean up. Somebody likes to use the annotation that's going on here. Let's clean this up. Okay, let me stop sharing for 1 minute, and I'm just going to show you 3 of my favorite books, and it relates to this like pre-read discussion. So, and I have them here because I actually reference them a lot. Okay, so here's my first favorite book. I don't know if you guys have heard about Who Gets In and Why and Jeff Salingo. The good thing actually is that the books I'm going to show you are all within the past year. So it's the first time in a long time in college admissions that there have been 3 great books that are really like so recent. So Jeff has been, you know, a higher ed journalist for over 20 years. He, you know, knows the space really well. And pre-COVID, you know, lucky for him that he spent a year at 3 different colleges sitting in on the admissions office. And so he saw the whole process. He saw the decisions. There were 3 different schools: Davidson, University of Washington, and I don't know why I can't think. I think it was Emory. Sorry, Emory was the 3rd. And so he really saw how they make decisions, when like finances come in to part of the decision, kind of the whole, you know, back office of what happens. And so if nothing else, and this came out in September, so it's very, you know, current. He actually is going to have a paperback version that comes out, I think in September. But I honestly, as a parent of a soon to be rising 12th grader, I wouldn't wait. I would just buy the hard copy. It's not even that expensive now because it's gone down. I don't know. I'm going to guess it's like $17. And it's actually also, I have to say, kind of a fun read. Obviously, Jeff's a great writer, and it almost reads like a story. You're following like different people's stories. So that's a really good book. This book explains much more of the admission side of the process. Okay. So this book just came out in January, like the end of January. So maybe it's only like 3.5 months old. This book is by Ron Lieber. Ron is actually the New York Times money columnist. He's the head writer of that money section. And this book is more on, like Jeff's book was more on the admissions process. This book is much more on the financial process. So it gives you some of the history that I'm touching upon about like how merit scholarships came to be. It talks about the industry behind merit scholarships and consultants that work in the industry. It talks about you know, different ways of navigating the system. It actually, and I'm kind of feel like I'm doing like a little ad for Ron's book, but The Price You Pay for College, and I've done actually 2 Facebook Lives with Ron, and quite honestly, he became a member of the Paying for College Facebook group a year before he wrote this book. So he used a lot of information from the Facebook group and from people's experiences. And the title, what he really wanted to go after was helping people understand the process, but also helping you figure out as a family what you're willing to pay for college, and so some families, you might have a certain amount of money, and you might be willing to take out loans because some features of college are important for you. So this was actually kind of to help you make a value judgment on what your values are for education and what type of a school you thought is important, and also what pieces of an education you're willing to pay for or not. So really good book. And then my third is called, pretty basic, Paying for College. It has no relation to the Facebook group that I started. And it's written by Calman Chaney, who I don't know. I actually happen to know Ron and Jeff, but I don't know Calman. I'd love to meet him someday. And I have to say, I don't know his official background. I'm just going to guess, I'm looking at it right now, that he's got to be some sort of like a CFP, definitely a financial college planner, because he's much more technical than these other books. This really goes step by step of like how the formulas work, how you fill out the forms. This is a little bit more of like a Bible of getting things done. The other two books kind of give you the high level about how the system works and how you might want to strategize. So these three books, I think, would be a great combination. So how this started, how I started talking about the books, was because Ron has made a big push, and I agree with him that in all of his research and travels, he came across two schools that do what they call merit pre-reads. So Vina just suggested like a financial pre-read. Well, now two schools, and it's only two, do what called a merit pre-read. And what that is, and the two schools are Whitman College and Worcester College. And what that means is that you can go to those schools and basically give your students, and I don't know exactly what you need to give in, but I'm assuming you're giving in kind of like a mini version of the student's application. And they will give you a sense of how much merit money that they would give your students. And so that's great. Like, it's, why should we all be surprised? Like, why do we have to go through this process, pick out schools, have your students spend all this time applying, either get denied or even get accepted, but then we don't know the price until like a year and a half into this process, right? It seems a little backwards. So these schools are now saying, hey, we're going to try and work with you, and we're going to give you a merit pre-read. Like, we may not guarantee this, but it's probably pretty close to what we would give your student if they were to apply. And so you could say it's a little bit of a marketing ploy, maybe, but hopefully maybe it's a new process that's going to happen. So my last point before I move back to the presentation is that Ron, he likes to kind of get people to like to act, kind of be like our own force of activism. Is that he feels that more families should ask more colleges to give them a merit pre-read. So he's actually challenging us all as parents to go to different schools and say, hey, College of Worcester, Whitman College is doing these merit pre-reads. Like, can you do that for me? Can you do that for my child, or my students asking, can you do that? I'd like to know what the money is, or what I could potentially get before I go through all this process. So, Ron's belief, which I think it's worth pushing, is that if it's kind of like consumer force, the more people who ask for it, the more the schools are going to say, hey, maybe we need to offer this. So that is my challenge to everybody, because you are the first group of families that we're asking to challenge that. And so somebody's asking, should you do it by phone, email, or letter? That's a good question. I would try all of them, to tell you the truth. I can't, right now, we may not be able to walk in person to the admissions office or see schools yet, although I'm hoping it's coming pretty soon. So for asking about a merit pre-read, I wouldn't try a letter. I would either try an email or a phone call. It might be worthwhile doing an email, because my guess is if you send an email, it's going to get, forwarded to somebody else to say, hey, these families are asking for this. But let's see what happens. Yeah. So somebody's saying, I think written that way, there's automatically a record of request. I think that's a great idea, Elena. That's a good point. Okay. So, and always tell us what happens. Like if somebody makes a breakthrough at a college that's now giving a merit pre-read, let's know. Okay, let me go back and share. Okay, so I'm assuming that you can see this again. Let me get my chat back up. Okay, we're back in business. So enrollment management, I'm just going to spend 2 seconds on this, is really honestly the business of college admissions. In the past, we used to like call people just dean of admissions or, you know, admissions officer. Now they're actually being called enrollment managers or dean of enrollment management. And I only bring that up is because, you know, I don't think there's anything wrong in parents, families, like thinking, I mean, college to some extent has become a business. Of course, we always like think of academia in a certain way, but at the end of the day, a college needs to cover its bills, right? And it's got beds and seats it needs to make sure are filled. And so if you kind of make the comparison, to me, enrollment management is similar to marketing because enrollment managers, right, are tasked with bringing in new customers. Their new customers are you and your students. They have certain goals that they need to make. They either need to meet, pull in a certain amount of tuition revenue, or they have a certain number of seats they need to fill. And that's what they're juggling with. And they're using tools and marketing tools to some extent, like merit money to kind of, you know, pull in some students that, you know, might be willing to, even though you give them a discount, they're still ending up paying more than other students. So it's very similar to the airline business. You know, in terms of discounting, some seats get discounted at different rates than other seats. Some flights get discounted. Some type of people get discounted. You know, the business traveler doesn't get the discount as much as, you know, the last minute traveler. So it's become a very similar industry. And there's a whole strategy to appeals and how long you wait to tell the school whether or not you're coming. And so this also plays into a lot of times, I'll get the question, I'm sure maybe it's here, about early decision, early action. What happens, are students getting merit money in those cases? So in early decision, your student may not get the merit money that they would get if they had applied later in the process. I can't say it's not a blanket rule, but I would go into early decision kind of like thinking that that's the case. First of all, a lot of the schools that are offering early decision are the schools who don't even give merit scholarships. So if you're applying to those schools, you're not applying to get merit money, you're applying because you want to just get accepted into a more selective school. But there are schools that are who do give merit money, but they may not give it during early decision. And it's really, again, I tell people, put on your business hat. And it's just really, if you sit there from the perspective of the college, if you have a student that is applying early decision, they are basically saying, I'm coming to the school. I want to come to the school. If you take me, I'm coming. And so if I were in the seat of the enrollment management or manager, I would think, well, I only have a certain amount of money, right, that I can give out for merit scholarships. I'm not going to give out money to the student who says, I'm coming to you, I'm so excited. I'm going to save my money and use it for the other students that I might have to incentivize later on in the process. So that, you know, it might be a reason why your student who applied early decision didn't get merit money, but a same, you know, similar student who applies regular decision might have gotten merit money. That's one example. A lot of schools who who have early action, and if your student applies early action, sometimes it actually kind of works in the reverse. Sometimes the schools that have early action actually do give out merit money to the early action students because they just want to kind of close the deal, because they know that that student didn't apply under any sort of binding situation, but they obviously were interested. You accepted then. They're under the hopes that if you're the first kind of like college to offer that student money, maybe they will just say, hey, I'm so happy I got the money. I'm not going to go through the process anymore. I'm just going to finish and accept going to the school. That's one philosophy about why sometimes we see students who apply early action receiving more merit scholarship money. Okay, let's keep going. So I'm going to shift now and talk about how do you find merit scholarship. I kind of gave you the landscape of what merit scholarship is. And what I want like to empower parents is that you can take control of the process. Your student can take control of the process. And the way to take control is to learn. And that's what you're doing today. You know, you're learning. That's why I encourage you to buy the books. That's giving you more knowledge about the process. And so the more you understand about how the system works, right, the better you can navigate it, the better you can pull the levers of the system to your advantage. So if you understand how a college gives out money, if you understand what the formulas are all about, if you understand the deadlines, if you understand the pros and cons of applying early or early action, now you're kind of a little bit more in the driver's seat. You still might not be able to guarantee what the results are going to be, but you probably, quite honestly, can navigate the system much more smartly than if you didn't have all this information. Okay, we talked about how do you take control, understanding the process, deadlines, timelines, really important. Ask questions. I keep kind of encouraging that, and make yourself familiar with the terminology. So I'm going to switch and show you College Insights, and I'm going to explain to you the data that's in there and how you can use College Insights. So I wanted to, here, I'll put it in the chat. So College Ave Student Loans, as part of their sponsorship, is also sponsoring a first free month of using College Insights. And if you want to follow along with me, or if you just want to look at it later, here, I'll put the URL in the chat. collegeinsights.roadtocollege.com. And then if you want to get the first month free, use the code first month free. And this is really no pressure. I'm not saying this for pressure, but this code is only going to be valid until April 20th. It's just because we've been doing it. College Ave has been sponsoring this for 3 months. And so it kind of runs up after April 20th. So if you want to, you can absolutely use the tool after that. But if you want to get the first month free, use that code before April 20th. And after that, it's $24.99 a month. It is not meant to be expensive. It's not meant that you need to use this for a very long time. Quite honestly, most families don't need to use it for more than 3, maybe 4 months at the most, but it all depends on how quickly you want to kind of do your research and, pull your information together. And so some people can just use it for a month and they get everything they need out of it. So it's kind of like where you are in the process and how much research you're still doing. It might depend on how long you're going to use it for. Okay, let me stop sharing here and then go and show you College Insights. Okay, let me share again now. Okay, just anybody give me a thumbs up or a yes that they can now see my screen. So now that I've switched it. Okay, yeah. Thank you. Thanks. So I want to show you, this is, if you go to College Insights, this is kind of the way it looks. If you don't want to even try the first month free or anything, anybody will get 3 free searches. So you can go and just try the 3 free searches, then you can use the code, anything you want. But this is the way it looks. And then I'm going to log in and then you'll see all the data that comes in. And then I'm going to explain to you where the data comes from. Okay, so yeah, while this loads, and it does take, a little bit of time to load, not that long, but we're working on it. Let me just tell you that this is the first version of what we created. It did take me like 10 months to develop, but we only put it live like in really the end of October, beginning of November. I only say that if you've got improvements, you've got suggestions, let us know. We're working on changes now to put out like a little bit more easier version to use, hopefully over the summer. So we know that there are places to improve, but let me know. It's always nice to hear any suggestions that people have. So the information, this was really created to pull data together from multiple sources and to make it easier to search that data and compare the numbers much more quickly, and to sort things and filter. I mean, there are a lot of college search sites out there, but a lot of those college search sites have their focus is, I think, a little bit different. They're trying to find that perfect social fit. So a lot of the search sites might have criteria based on, like, does the school have a Greek system, or how good the food is. I think like Niche has a lot of those ratings. This was not for that purpose. This is kind of like cut and dry. We are here to look at the numbers related to schools and find the schools that are going to give your student the most money. That was the purpose of this. Okay, so here's where there's 4 sources of data listed in here. One is public and free, and it's from the government, and it's called IPEDS. And I'll put it here, IPEDS. If anybody wants to Google that, the government has their own search site. It's called College Navigator. That's perfectly fine. They just kind of do it differently. And the government has a ton of information. We use some of it, but what's not always that great about the government information, there's usually a time lag to it. That's really probably the biggest issue, that there's a time lag, and they don't go in detail on some of the areas that we want to see more information about, particularly related to merit. But so some of the information here is from IPEDS. The other big source of information is from something called the Common Data Set. If you haven't heard of that before, I would definitely look into it. And so the Common Data Set is more detailed information from colleges that is collected by 3 sources. It's collected by the College Board, US News and World Report, and then a private company called Peterson's. And this is the data that US News and World Report uses for their rankings. There's a lot of really interesting information in it. Like if you can Google any school, I'm going to say just like Villanova Common Data Set. And Kathleen is saying that, yeah, the Common Data Set is invaluable. I would highly recommend you Google any school that you're interested, plus the word Common Data Set, look at it. And just as its name says, it has a common set of data, and it's usually in the same format. So, and there are sections. So there's section A, section B, section C. Every section C is the same. And so it's pretty easy to look at one and kind of glance and look at others. So what I found is that the downside, not so much of the Common Data Set itself, is that if you want to look at Common Data Set information, you have to go to each school's website to kind of ask, and look at that school's Common Data Set. There aren't that many places that pool all the Common Data Set information together so that you can do more of a reverse lookup. So that's what we did. So we don't have all the Common Data Set information, and that's kind of one of the improvements, or one of the suggestions I get. There's certain pieces of that data that people want to include, so we might include that. But we pulled, at least for this version, we pulled what we thought was the most important pieces of the Common Data Set, and that's related to the money. It's related to how much money the colleges give out for need-based and how much money the colleges give out for merit-based. So we have that information here. We married it with the government information. We've scraped some other information that we put in here that was just, not really out there in one source. And then the last set of information that we have, which I think is personally pretty cool, is what I would call crowdsourced information. And so I'm just going to pull one up for Abilene College. So for the past 3 years, we have been asking families in the Paying for College 101 group, and just like families in our social media audience, to share with us their actual students' offers. So, at this time of year, and actually it started earlier, colleges are accepting students, and they're giving students what their actual award information is. And so we wanted to know what that actual information was like, and so we started asking people to share it, and people have been sharing it, and that's great. Every year we've gotten more and more data. This is our third year. The first year was a little light. We kind of started at the last minute. Last year we have a lot of good data, and this year we're really getting a lot of good data. And so so this crowdsourced information, we can now see at different EFC levels, what students are receiving, and also what the what test scores, what GPA, what state those students are from. Of course, we're not seeing their application, and they might have had a great essay, and they might have been in a ton of really interesting extracurriculars. Of course, we're not seeing that, but the reality is that what the pieces of information that we're asking for do kind of give you directionally, there's my word, directional information. It directionally tells you, what type of student that college is giving money to. And so, and you can start to see patterns like, obviously, let's see, I guess Abilene looks like, I don't know, I'd have to look into a little well, actually, this is interesting. So Abilene might have only been giving a low amount of money to students early decision, but they gave more money regular decision. So every year, oh, did someone say there's $20 in aid? Okay, I think that this might have been definitely a little glitch. The first month of the tool, we weren't like, you had to put in a dollar amount in a field, so people were just putting in small dollar amounts. So if you see something like $1 or $20, it means that student actually didn't get any money, but they were just putting it in because the tool was forcing you to enter a field. But we cleaned that up. So and we have it, and we share the information for 2 years on College Insights. So okay, so that's like an overview of the data sources. How you can use College Insights. You can use it 2 ways. You can type in specific college names. So, if you had a specific college you were interested in, maybe your student already has a list, maybe they're kind of curious about certain schools, and you can go in here and just put in, the specific college name, and then you search, and it will give you information just for those schools. Or the more likely way that a lot of people are using it is you are going to put in criteria, and we only actually pick very kind of high level criteria. And there's a reason for that, is that we want people to, when you're looking for colleges that can give your student merit money, you want to be open-minded, right? You want to maybe look at a school that maybe you didn't know the name of, but your student fits the criteria and they're giving money. So don't discard those schools, because you should kind of at least know about them and then be willing to research a little bit more. And the most basic rule is that the school that's going to give your student the most money are the schools where your student is at the top of that school's academic range, right? They're really, they're trying to pull better and better students to this school. So you want to know what their academic range is. You want to know what their SAT, ACT score is, and then you want to look at your student's score, and you want to see, or their GPA, and you want to see, is my student going to kind of be at the top of that academic range? And those are the students that are receiving money. Because again, just sit back. If you're a college and you have a certain amount of money, you want to use that money to attract the students who are going to make kind of continue to lift up your school, maybe from a rankings perspective, or and so that's the sweet spot. Students that are at the 75th percentile or higher are going to get a lot more of the money than if you're kind of sitting in the middle of the range. So because of that, we don't want people to narrow down their choices too fast. So all those other search sites, when you pick 8 or 9 different filters, you're narrowing down your list pretty quickly. And so you might not see a school that could be a potential, because you've cross them off the list because I don't know, they don't have co-ed dorms, So the only criteria that we're using is major. And again, you don't even have to use major, because if your student doesn't know what major they are interested in, you don't have to choose a major. But if your student like wants engineering or wants nursing, then you can pick that, you know, in the major. We have location, and the way you can pick location is by region, and these are regions as defined by the government. They're not the regions that we pick, but you know, they're pretty self-explanatory. And then you can also pick state. You can do a combination. You could just pick states. So I'm going to actually put one in here. I'm going to pick schools in the mid, let's see, on the East Coast. We'll do East Coast. So I'm going to take the Mid East, New England, the Southeast, and then we're going to take some individual states just for maybe the fun of it. Let's say, let's do Alabama, and let's do Illinois. Oh, I missed my eyes. Illinois, let's do California and Washington State. And let's just to see, you know, what type of results we get back. Okay, so you can pick state. Now you can pick size. Again, we actually aren't too detailed in size. We just kind of let you, the top two rungs here are like really high. So if your school, if you know your student, and a lot of students actually don't, but some do, but if you know your student doesn't want to go to those uber big schools, then, you know, kind of knock this down to maybe they are willing to go to a school that's 10,000 and below. And maybe they don't want to go to a really small school. So maybe, you know, let's kind of bring this up to like 3,000, even though that is still on the small side. But so that's, you know, a kind of a way to start narrowing down the school size. Okay, last, and let me take a sip because before we start talking about test scores. Okay, so we have test scores here as a filter, and let me explain why. I mean, we actually might change it by the summer, but let me explain why it is here now. All the data that we're talking about is data from last year. That's just the best we have. That's the best anybody has, really. So it's this data from the last year admissions season. Last year's admission season, majority of the schools were not test optional. Last year, majority of the schools did give out money based on a combination of GPA and test scores. So that is just the best and cleanest data that is available. So that's why we have it here. We actually, so just so you know, new data starts to become available and kind of compiled, and we'll probably have it by end of July. We might change this, you know, depending on the data that's available. We either might take away test scores, or we might actually add in GPA, but I'll tell you why we didn't add in GPA now. But so if your student, you might say, well, my student doesn't have a test score and maybe they're never going to take the test. That's fine. So in that case, I'm going to give you two charts. What I would, and you still might want to use the tool with a test score, but you can also use the tool without a test score. So but here are two sites that help you convert your students' GPA to an ACT or convert their GPA to an SAT. It just kind of a way to kind of give you an idea of what their potential SAT or ACT score is. So again, you can use this tool and not even put in a test score. But if you do put in a test score, let me show you. You can, you know, narrow it down to like a range. Let's just say we're going to say 1,200 to 1,300. And then you can pick, show me the schools with all of this information and the test score is in the average, or show me the schools with all this information and the test score is in the top 75th percentile. You personally, you want to, if you pick average, it means like my child has a good chance of getting in there. Okay, but it doesn't mean that they have a good chance of getting money. They just have a good chance of getting in. If you pick the top range to 75th percentile, that means if a school shows up here, that you have a much better chance of your student receiving money at that school in addition to getting in. So I'm just going to put in the top 75th percentile, and now we're going to search, and then I'm going to show you the rest of the data. Okay, so Megan, while you're just asking, you don't see where to put in. Okay, so just so you know, Megan, the code is letter 1 ST1 first month free, because and you put it in. There should be I'm already logged in, but there should be where you where it says to register. there should be a spot that says like discount code, and that's where you put in that code. So there's a lot of information here. I'm just going to actually kind of quickly go through the information that I think is most important for people to look at. But just to give you a background, we didn't pick this information out of the blue. When we designed this, we actually did surveys of the parents in the Paying for College 101 group. And this is the information that they had been using and they found most useful. Okay, so the criteria I put in, I think, there was different regions, some states. I kind of narrowed down the size, and then I picked for schools or for a test range of 1,200 to 1,300 that would be in the top or in the 75th percentile. So what this is telling me that there's 64 schools that meet the criteria. Of those 64, and we're going to look, 64 of them give money. Do you see up here? It kind of tells you how many of the schools give money, and you can actually, if 50 of the schools gave money, you can click and then you would only see those 50 schools. So I'll just gonna, again, quickly go through the data. Pretty self-explanatory. The first field is just to tell you whether this is a private school or a public school, okay? And then, let me get rid of that erase. Let's erase this. Okay. State, region, undergraduates, I think everybody can understand that. And sorry, I need to get rid of this. Okay. And then percent of the population that is male, female, that actually might be helpful depending on the type of school. I was just helping a family today. Their son got into Rose-Hulman. And if you looked at Rose-Hulman, it's like 75% male, 25% female. So if you were a female applying, you probably have a pretty good chance because they want more females. So, and there are schools that could be the opposite where there are more males than females. So that could be some interesting information. Actually, look here, the first one at Delphi, it's heavily female. So if you were a male, you probably had a better chance of getting in there. Student faculty ratio just tells you, obviously how big the classes are. Sophomore retention rate. So it turns out that a lot of places, they don't share that information, but that basically is telling you how many freshmen decided to return as sophomores. And that's, that's important information to know. And the average is about like 82%. So anything above, those schools are doing great. People are happy, they're returning. Anything below, might be something you want to keep your eye on. Again, I'm going to use the word directional. It doesn't mean that the school is falling apart because they had like Columbia College, has a 71% sophomore retention rate. Doesn't mean it's horrible. It just means that might be something you want to ask about. Like, what's going on? Like, what is there something that happened? Like, why are some like, a little bit above average number of students not coming back? So these kind of are, again, I said like it's all pieces of a puzzle and you're trying to kind of figure out like what the pieces are telling you. So four-year graduation rate, you might say like, why? Like, what is such a big deal? Like, why do you have four-year graduation rate? Like, that should be basic and standard. Well, it turns out that the government only requires that colleges share 6-year graduation rates. So when you see a graduation rate anywhere, it should specify, and sometimes it doesn't, so you should ask, but it should say, is this the 4-year graduation rate or the 6-year graduation rate? Now that you know this, when you look more carefully, you might actually find that on college websites, sometimes they're showing both, but sometimes they may only be showing the 6-year graduation rate because that's all they're required to show. Well, that's fine. That might be all that they're required to show. But me as a consumer, I want to know what the 4-year graduation rate, because I only want my child to go to college for 4 years. I can't afford to pay for the 5th year and 6th year. And if we're talking about merit money, you are not getting merit money for year 5 and 6. So you want to do your best to obviously find a college that is also trying their best to get these students graduated in 4 years. And there might be a good reason, and I actually sorted this, so we're seeing the schools with these really low graduation rates. Let's sort this the opposite way. There might be a really valid reason why a school has a low 4-year graduation rate. And let me just give you like 2 very obvious ones, but you might not realize. Schools that have co-ops and like two of the most well-known ones are Drexel and Northeastern, have a low 4-year graduation rate. And that's because the students are doing co-ops. They sometimes, a lot of times they're doing 3 co-ops. So their 4 years are being spread out over 5 and 6 years. So they're actually still only paying for 4 years of school, but they're not graduating in 4 years. So those schools kind of get hurt and they don't want to show their 4-year graduation rate. And I understand. Another reason why a 4-year graduation rate might be low is because it could be a very STEM heavy school. Could be a lot of engineering, a lot of students that are going for 5-year engineering programs. And again, that would bring down the 4-year rate. And the last kind of possibility, and there might be many more, but these are just like the big ones that come to mind, is it could be, and this happened a lot at the California schools, that because of budget issues, there was a pretty well known that over the past few years, some students could not graduate in 4 years from the UCs because they couldn't fulfill their requirements, because the college was not providing, was not offering classes in enough, enough frequency for them to actually satisfy their requirements and graduate. So of those 3 examples, the first 2 I think are valid. The last one, it might be valid that it happens, but that would not be a good case for me. Like I would want to really understand like that if my student was going to, even a good, UC school, they were having issues. If you were going to go to that school, you should keep that in mind and be on top of your student and their course selection and making sure that they can get their requirements done so that they weren't stuck having to go a 5th year. Okay, continuing through, we have a whole set of information on like test optional, which 90% of schools are these days. We have the average SAT, the 75th percentile for both ACT and SAT. And now we have this whole section on admission rates. So we broke out this information, and we show you what the overall admission rate is. And then we showed you for some schools that have these early decision and early action programs, you're going to see that sometimes the admission rate is different for those schools, early decision, and there might be an advantage to apply early decision or early action. So for example, and I'm just looking at like a one that shows you that SUNY, this SUNY school is saying their overall admission rate is 65%, but if you're applying early decision, then it's 84%. So they're obviously almost taking almost everybody, early decision, but not everybody is getting the same treatment, regular decision. Let's see another interesting one. Let's see. I think if I sort it this way, we'll see. Like the more selective schools usually show this. Okay. So here's another one. PACE. Well, that's interesting. So PACE, very interesting. I'm not sure I can necessarily explain the rationale that's happening here, but PACE, 60% of the students are getting in overall. Only 64%, sorry, yeah, 64% are getting an early decision, 85 are getting an early admission. So they're obviously being a little bit more lenient, or just letting people in early action. And, depending on how selective the school is, these numbers will vary, and there you will see at the more selective schools, if student wants to apply early decision, you're going to see like an advantage just in the numbers. And I'm just going to make it up, but like probably for a school like even like Tulane, you'll see that their early decision number, early action numbers, they accept more students than they will in the regular decision pool. Okay. And so continuing along this line, now we get to the section all about the money and the different types of money. So the first section is about need-based money, and the second section is about merit money. And the quick and dirty way to kind of figure out whether or not you're going to potentially get need-based money is if you've calculated your EFC, which we can give you some links to where to do that. If you have an estimated EFC, and then you compare your EFC against the cost, the total cost of what it costs to go to that school. If your EFC is less than the cost of attendance, you potentially, well, you have what they call demonstrated need, and you could potentially get financial need money for your demonstrated need if that school, offers need-based aid. So if you fall into that category where your EFC, honestly, your EFC has got to probably be, 55,000 or below. So if anybody's got an EFC or 60,000 and above, in most places, you're not getting need-based aid. But if in that 60, 55 and below, there are schools that, where you're going to get need-based aid. And definitely if you're in the 30,000 and below, you're going to get need-based aid. So if that's your situation, you're going to want to look in these columns, and you're going to want to find the school that is going to meet the highest percentage of need. So if they say, like Lewis here University is saying, that they meet 91% of your need. So whatever your need is, and I'll just make round numbers. If your EFC is 30 and the school costs 60, your need is 30, then Lewis is saying we will meet 91% of your financial need. Okay, that's pretty good. I'd want to kind of investigate those schools. And then they give you what the average, need amount is, in this case, 31,000. And then just as I showed you crowdsourced information, we have crowdsourced information for the students who had gotten need-based money. So you can look at that information. So then the next section is here, all of this area is about the merit money. So the first column says, what percentage of the freshmen that are attending that school are freshmen who do not have financial need? So this term financial need, right? I mean, of course, we all feel like we have need because the school is so expensive these days. I don't know anybody who can just completely afford it straight out these days. But the word need here is based on what the colleges determine the need is. So again, it goes back to what's the difference between the cost of attending there and what your EFC is. So what this is saying, and let's see if there's like an interesting University of Tampa. I'm just going to show you because it's at the top here. So they're saying that 42% of the students who go there did not show that they have a financial need. So that means that in theory, 42% of those students were supposed to pay full price. But if you look at the next column is saying what percent of the students who don't have a financial need actually got merit scholarship. So at University of Tampa, 42% of the students did not have financial need, but 91% of those students were getting some form of merit scholarship. And on average, they got $9,800. So that's a school, if I kind of tie this all together to the beginning of the conversation, I explained that there are some schools that are giving almost everybody a merit scholarship. University of Tampa, by just looking at these numbers, that's kind of what their strategy is. They are saying, of the students who don't have financial need, we still want you to come here and we're going to make it financially attractive to you. So we're going to give you, at least $9,800. Maybe for the students who are even are scoring higher, we'll give you more. And so now we can say, wow, I didn't even realize this. We have 52 people who shared their offers from University of Tampa. So let's see what they got. So we just saw that the average was 98, but I'm looking quickly across these columns, and so it varies. So some students got below the 98, some students got above, there's a fair number here who got 18,000. And my guess is if you looked at the students who got on the higher dollar amount, they were probably students that their scores put them at the higher range of what University of Tampa's scores are, whether it's the GPA or SAT. So, that I just find this information interesting. It just, again, it's kind of like all pieces of a puzzle that you're trying to pull together. I honestly didn't even realize we had so much data on University of Tampa. So that's the way I would use this information. I would personally kind of sort these columns. So let's say I would sort the column here, or maybe I was already sorted. Okay, no. To look at, I'm actually, looking at what percentage of the student body does not have need, and then what percentage of those students are getting any sort of merit scholarship. So I would sort this column, the freshmen without need receiving merit scholarship. Okay, and there's a number above 100, and I'll tell you about that in a second. But let's see what's interesting that stands out. I mean, Bradley University, 100% of the students are getting 15,000. 100% of the students without need are getting an average of 15,000. But for whatever reason, it's kind of interesting. They're only saying that, well, 22% of the students don't have financial need. So that actually means that this is a campus that has a lot of students who do have financial need. So it just also tells you a little bit about the socioeconomic makeup of the students. So you might see numbers that are above that are kind of like out of whack. And honestly, they are. I mean, so Manhattan College is saying 165% of the students without need are, got merit money. Obviously, that's not physically possible. So all I can tell you is that this data, which is coming from the common data set, is self-reported. So the colleges self-reported. There is no mechanism that validates what they shared is correct. That's just the way the system works right now. So if there's a number like 165%, I mean, I'm gonna be honest and say we will check it, but my gut is that the numbers are correct. It's just that Manhattan College reported their numbers incorrectly. So if you see a school where the numbers are strange and you don't understand them, let me know, because we will look into it, and we will, try and probably call the school to see if we can get more valid numbers. But it's most likely that the school has just reported incorrect information. So that's a lot of information I threw at everybody tonight. You can always feel free to send me questions. I'm just going to scan through to see what questions there might be here. I did see somebody ask about how do you calculate your EFC. I will be sending a follow-up email with a link to this recording, with the link to those two charts I told you about. And so I will also put in there a link to some places where you can calculate your EFC. I recommend you do it, even if you're not going to get any need-based money. You should just kind of like see what your family's money is, like your family's number is, kind of where you fall in the spectrum. And, depending on, maybe for some schools, you might fall into the spectrum of getting financial need. And I mean, my guess is for a lot of people, they're not, but it's still good to know your EFC number.
It's Can I just leave this? Because I feel like they're just sold it.
Okay. Is it possible to get both need-based aid and merit aid? Yes, absolutely. It is possible to get both. So if using your example, EFC is 30,000 and the college costs 60,000 and the college meets your need 100%, can you get merit aid to reduce the 30,000 even lower? That's a really good question. No, most colleges are not going to give you money that gives you enough money that you have that you don't have to meet your EFC. I mean, your EFC is just that. It's like your expected family contribution. There's very, very few cases that the college is going to give you enough money so that you have a lower EFC, and it happens all because of scholarships. You might get outside scholarships that help you do that, but the college most likely is not going to give you enough money to go below your EFC. So because of that, that's another reason why you should calculate your EFC, because that is the minimum you will be asked and expected to pay for college. It could obviously go above that, but that will be the minimum. So yes, hi, Anne. Anne is saying need-aware schools do take need into the admissions decision. So that's a lot of what you'll read about in these two books from Ron and Jeff Salingo. A need-aware school, might, or in a lot of cases, look at two students. They will look at their academic achievements, but they might also bring in their financial situation. And so two students that are kind of equal academically, but one student's family is a little bit, can afford more than the other student, that might be the reason why that student gets in. Because if the school has to support, or it doesn't have to support that student as much financially, it means that they can use their money to support other students. So absolutely, need-aware schools are looking at your financial situation as part of the admissions decision. Okay, I will look through the rest of these questions to see if there's anything else and try and answer it in the follow-up email. But hopefully tonight has given you more than just a start, has given you a good idea of how this process works, particularly for merit scholarships. And, you'll get started. I see a question here. What do you think of SCORE as a college search tool? This is just my opinion. I have, and maybe some of you know or you don't know, I have 3 kids, but my youngest is a high school senior. So I've just been going through the process, and my son's school used SCORE. So I had the firsthand experience of using SCORE. And I will say, and for those of you who don't know what SCORE is like a one of these platforms that the schools use to help you through this process. Like it's a quite honestly, SCORE has become a competitive to Naviance. Naviance is a little bit more well known because a lot of schools use that. Anyhow, my opinion of SCORE, it was had a very nice interface, but I like data, and I will tell you that their data was not accurate and was not up to date. So that's just my little tidbit. And I even told that to my own son's school. I said, the data is not accurate in SCORE. And so I was a little surprised that they didn't pick up on that. Okay, let's see what else there is. I see some people who answered other people's questions. What happens if you can't afford the early decision school you applied to? So you have options. Early decision, I think I would call it maybe like morally binding, is not legally binding. So if you truly can't afford it, then you go to the school and you say, I can't afford the school, even though my student applied early decision. And in most cases, they will let you out. In all cases, they will let you out of the commitment. The only thing I will say is that most of the early decision schools actually have pretty accurate net price calculators. So I, would use the net price calculator for an early decision school. If you're even kind of a little concerned if it's accurate or not, I would go, and this was very early on, like Vina said, I would go to the school and ask them for a financial pre-read. And from those 2 pieces of information, both the net price calculator and a financial pre-read, if the number is in your ballpark, then you should feel comfortable that most likely that's the number that they're going to, provide back when your student applies early decision. And again, I challenge it. Ron has now challenged it in his book and all the talks that he gives. It's not, early decision isn't as binding as we think it is. So if your student gets in and you truly can't afford it, then you ask to be taken out of the commitment, and most schools will do that. You don't want to be in that situation, because quite honestly, I think there's enough information to let you know whether or not you can afford it before you apply. But if that happens to be the case, you will be let out of the commitment. But I don't think they really want to advertise that, because that's not the, to some extent, the game that they're playing. They want students to apply early. The more selective schools want to take a big percentage of their class. They are usually taking between 45 to 55% of their class early decision, because again, think about it from a business standpoint, it secures their revenue, right? If they know that 55% of the class has committed, that money is locked in, they know that revenue is coming, and they don't have to worry as much about getting the rest of the students, as opposed to a different college that might not even have early decision, or doesn't take as many students early decision. So there's trade-offs for both the college and for the student about whether or not to apply early decision. Okay, so it's 9:35 almost. I really appreciate everybody hanging in there with me. Lots of information. Good luck. We'll have more sessions on other aspects of the process. But try College Insights if you want to just fool around with it for the first month, or if you need it a little longer. And let me know what you think, and let me know what questions you have. Okay. Take care. This is recorded. If you want to come back and watch it again, or like flip through it, you can definitely come back and watch any pieces of it again. And hope it was helpful. Okay, good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks. And thank you, Bridget, I think it was, for being my gatekeeper and letting everybody in. Really, I really appreciate that. That's helpful.
Thank you.